Have you noticed that there isn't much talk about the new tax reform in Nigeria anymore? Nobody knows whether it has taken effect or not. The deadline for the tax filing had been shifted twice, if my memory serves me right. It is a point Nigerians are beginning to think that they have escaped the new tax regime of Tinubu. Well, sorry to break it to you. They've already started taxing you, but you haven't realized it yet. There's a form of tax called inflation, and I'm about to explain it to you in the simplest of terms. Take a look at this chart. By the way, it's important to watch this to the end before you start to argue. And I also have a message for those who would attack this and accuse me of oversimplifying it. They always do not want you to understand these concepts. That's why they make it seem like it is complicated. They know that if they keep it simple, it would be hard to lie or deceive you. This chart represents Nigeria's inflation trend since this year. I'll explain what that means in a moment. But remember that the new tax regime was to take effect from January this year. Now, watch what happened after February when it was clear that people were not going to comply. Inflation started to climb. And don't let them tell you that it's the round war. Because look at Burkina Faso in the same period. You can see that it's actually deflating. I picked Burkina Faso specifically because it is a country serious about sovereignty, which is very important in all of these things. Story for another day. You see, inflation simply means that today, the prices of goods and services are now higher than yesterday, and your power to buy has decreased. Your money is losing value against the cost of goods and services, meaning that you will need more money to maintain your standard of living. And how do you get more money? By doing more work. So it means that you are going to labor more than you used to. When you labor, you are rewarded with money. Money is just paper from the government. Actually, the government wants you to have that paper, but you have to work for the paper to have value and then return some of that paper to the government as tax. Why does the government want your tax? The government wants your tax for revenue. Revenue for what? To spend on things like social services, defense, security, infrastructure, etc. But your government has a habit of spending it on things like this instead or this. And for that, you're not really happy to pay this tax and you are justified. But the problem is, you not paying tax does not stop the government from spending. They will simply borrow or print because they are not about to miss their luxury lifestyle because you don't want to pay tax. Now, when the government spends more than it earns, borrows, or decides to print money for its expenditure, which they do all the time, the result is inflation. Now, remember that this money the government has spent was based on artificial value and would require real value for the books to be balanced. That means nobody worked for that money in advance and now somebody has to work for it in arrears. Now, that's where you come in. The burden will be transferred to you. You are going to do the work to match the value for the reckless spending of your government. That's why now you have to double your hustle just to be able to afford the same things you could easily afford previously. That's what happens when inflation hits. And you know the worst part? Because your economy is also pegged to the dollar and the US government pretty much controls your government, the inflation in America also becomes your burden. Anything that reduces your spending power is tax. They don't teach you this in school. I once made a video about how Nigerians are the most taxed citizens on earth. It's still on my page. You can go watch it. So no, they have not forgotten the new tax regime. They're already taxing you, but you just don't realize it yet. Now, before you listen to anyone who tells you to disregard this, ask them to explain it to you in the language that you understand. And you will simply find out that they can't. Have you noticed that TV programs about the economy, they usually call them business shows on TV, are the only programs presenters use jargon while presenting? They don't use simple English like they do when they are presenting sports or entertainment. Ironically, the economy is actually what matters most. It controls every other sector, including the sports and entertainment. But for some reason, it's usually the least popular program on TV or radio. Sometimes 30-minute slots out of the whole day's programming just to speak big English to themselves and go. And it's not as if there are no simple ways to explain economic events. There are. Also, if you paid attention to your local TV or local radio stations, you would never see them present a show about the economy in your native language. but they can't present sports and entertainment in your native language. A bit more like how they translated Bible texts to your local languages, but science texts are not translated in your native languages. There's a reason why they don't want you to be economically literate. They know that once that happens and you begin to connect your economic conditions with the decisions being made on your behalf, you'll start to ask the right questions. And that's what they never want you to do.